Period.
I think he's making a good case for Christians now.
So far.
But you're too late. So the thing is, I've been into many forums and I've pushed this to my Christian friends. Look, you are not making your case when it comes to this issue of separation of church and state and religious liberty and all that. You have failed. You have failed to make your case. You have failed to convince people like me that we can't have Kaddi's court in the Constitution. You have failed actually to demonstrate to your followers as well. What you preached is extremism and fear and letting them know that, oh, this is going to take over, these people are going to take over, they'll start with this. And I believe that the problem that we've noticed between the Christian evangelicals, and I like to point this out, that when you see a Muslim extremist preaching hatred, Christians point finger at them. But when you see a Christian, evangelical, mad one, preaching hatred, he's evangelical Christian. He's a charismatic one. Right. So this knife should cut both ways. We have serious fanatics in this country. The church is full of them. And we don't point fingers at them. Instead, the way you've taken this debate to look at what has been wrong with this issue of Kaddi courts has been preaching fear to people and not using reason. The way we are now talking, I believe that the debate should be centered on the kind of government we have, not the kind of state we want. If you want a secular government, then I agree, get Kaddi court out. But if you want a secular state, we can't have a secular state because the state itself recognizes the role of religion in society.
You know, you are able to say such things and articulate your position like this because we Christians have spoken quite a lot about this. The Muslims, on the other hand, they have never given, and I'm sure you will not give me a reason why they need the Kaddi courts in the Constitution. Why are they telling us that Islam cannot function unless the Kaddi courts are entrenched in the Constitution? By the way, Muslims are not the only ones that have courts. The Hindus also have their court system. Even Christians, that sometimes we used to have a court system. So the Muslims have not told us, and I don't know if they've convinced you, that without the Kaddi courts being in the Constitution, Islam cannot function. I'm sure it can function very well because people are Muslims voluntarily. People are Muslims out of choice. People are Muslims because they believe that Islam serves my interests very well. Therefore, this is the religion I should identify myself with. We have no problem with that. Therefore, if it serves well, and among the things that it requires of you is that you have a dispute in matters of inheritance, in matters of divorce, and in matters of marriage, go to your Kaddi. Fair enough, go there. Why should they involve me? Because my pastor is also doing the same thing. Let him do that. But Muslims should tell us, what will they lose if the Kaddi courts were taken out of the Constitution?
What will Christian gain if the Kaddi court was taken out of religion?
Let me just jump in because this is turning into a zero-sum game of sorts. But coming back to the question of fanaticism and generalization, because when we are covering, for example, Al-Faisal's deportation, a lot of our viewers came back to us and said, look, you guys, we're seeing a lot of generalization. Okay, we have a problem here. Islam is not necessarily in and of itself a bad religion. Just because you have a few rotten fruit, that doesn't make the whole basket wrong. Now, coming back to the Christian argument, and perhaps this is something that's not been explored in this country, across the board in Uganda, there's some fairly strong push for legislation against homosexuals, which, correct me if I'm mistaken, includes the death penalty. And that has the support of Christian evangelicals in Uganda, doesn't it?
And the Muslims as well.
No, hang on. Christian evangelicals in Uganda. Now, the same law says that it is an offense to hide, quote unquote, or not to report on someone who is a homosexual. True or false?
According to the Ugandan law?
Yes, because that's the same bill that says that. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but that seems to me like a case of persecution, which, and I could be wrong, contradicts this whole idea of brotherly love and redemption, which is the core tenet of Christianity, isn't it?
Okay, to begin with, as Christians, we have a moral standard. And our moral standard is not dependent on what we think or what we like. It's dependent on what God has set for us. Now, God has explicitly stated that homosexuality is a sin. Now, if the government or the state agrees with that, we'll support the government. We'll agree with the government. So that, but if the government makes a legislation that contradicts the scriptures, we'll disagree with it. Now, and also to comment on the case of Faisal, because it looks like Christians were being fanatical. Now, I know for sure Muslims know this, Christians know that, and all Kenyans know this. Faisal was not deported from this country because he's a Muslim. He was deported because the government felt that this person has done some things, or he's not wanted for whatever reasons to be in this country. That could apply to anybody. If I went to a foreign country and I fell into the bad books of the government, or maybe I violated the law of that country, the country has the right to deport me. But it's not because, and I might be a Christian, it will not be because the government is against Christians. It's just that this particular person has fallen into the bad side of the law, wrong side of the law of the government, and there he has to go.
Let me jump in, and I'm going to take the devil's advocate position here.
Yeah.
Would you be perhaps arguing from a point of selective interpretation?
Interpretation of the law,
of doctrine,
of the scriptures, or
of scripture? Because if you're talking about the same God, and correct me if I'm wrong, this is the same one who wakes up one morning, looks down at the earth and says, I didn't create this, you guys are messed up, so I'll hit the reset button, flood the entire planet, start again. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, in the modern day context, that's genocide. Really, kill a few million people, that's genocide. Now, same God, few chapters, few books later, is busy saying, forgive and love one another. We're all one community, we must be one. Forgiveness and love and so on and so forth. So from, in the context of 52 books, he switches from mass murderer.
66 books.
Okay, 66 books. He
Yeah.
switches from mass murderer to pacifist. How do you reconcile those two?
Okay, let's start. Let me start with God judging the world. From a Christian perspective, God is just, at the same time God is love, and the two must come together. Now, when God judges the world, or when He judged the world through flood, He was judging the world because of the sinfulness of the world. The world had already sinned. God had, when He created Adam and Eve, He gave them standards by which to live by. And apparently there was an understanding that you live in this garden on this condition.
Has
And
the world become any less sinful since then?
Just a moment. And in the event that this happens, there will be a consequence. Now, what they was not supposed to do, they did, and the consequence followed. Now, it does not matter whether, because when the consequence followed, it was affected whoever was there. And the consequence was, the day you do this, you die. So, in fact, God was very lenient that He gave them several years before they were judged. That will not make Him a genocide God.
Right.